Hello and welcome to another edition of Meet the Manager. My name is Joe, and in this series I meet a manager with a more than enviable track record in FPL. Today I'm joined by Darren, who is no stranger to the top 1000. He is currently 7th in the live version of our all-time Hall of Fame list, so I'm very pleased to meet him. Darren, welcome. How are you?
Very good, thanks, Joe. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. As I said, very pleased to meet you because you've got an excellent track record in FPL. So it'd be interesting to find out how you've done it as well. And as usual, as I said before we came on air, we also find out where it may have gone wrong in the past and what lessons you might have learned. So what I'll do
Sure.
is I'm going to put up a picture of your career history, and I know we can see it's rather good. This is your 11th campaign. You finished in the top 1,000 three times. Now, I finished in the top 1,000 once, and I'm very proud of that. Three times, wow. I know it's a difficult achievement, and including 2016-17's finish of 103, so really high, almost in the top 100 there. Wow. In fact, you've only had one poor season out of all of that, really. The rest are firmly, really, in the top 50,000 or so places. Let's have a look at those top ones first, really. So, looking at those three top 1,000 finishes, are there any kind of common or key strategies you used those times, which meant you went not just excellently in that season, but you just went that bit further and a bit higher? So, yeah, what were your key strategies?
Um, yeah, so obviously there's a lot of different strategies that work for different people. For me personally, I like to take a pretty simple approach. I'm a relatively conservative manager.
Mm-hmm.
I try to sort of prioritize fixtures and minimize hits and relatively risk-free.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably one of my key strategies is the way I try to look for value
Okay.
in the squad. So um, I kind of see FPL a little bit like the whole Moneyball thing, where ultimately we're given this
Mm-hmm.
100 million or 100 fantasy pounds to spend, and I like to think, how can I sort of extract the most out of these funds?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so take for example the heavy hitters in the game, the
Yeah.
likes of Mane, Salah, Sterling. As we know, these guys they're probably going to end up the top scorers in the game in
Yeah.
terms of FPL points, but they don't necessarily provide the best value in terms of points
Mm-hmm.
per million. Um, so I only really like to own one or two of these players to give myself captain options.
Mm-hmm.
So um,
Yeah.
say for example, Mane and Salah. It's very unlikely that I'll ever own but the both of them at the same time, because where they play for the same team,
Mm-hmm.
they're only giving me one captain option.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So,
and
do,
go on.
do you think that as well, is that you're sort of not putting all your eggs in one basket? So, for example, Liverpool are just sort of winning or doing well every match, but not every
Yeah,
team. Man City, for example, they're not winning every match. So, does
yeah.
that also protect you just in case a good team that you're targeting for the captaincy don't actually do that well that week?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I'm far more likely to own a Salah and a Sterling, or Salah
Mm,
and KDB.
yeah.
So I've got the two options there.
Hmm.
Another thing with owning Mane and Salah is obviously, from my point of view, you lose out on the incredible value of TAA, BVD, Robertson
Yeah.
double up at the back.
Hmm.
I mean, the way I look at these guys is, I think last season all three of them scored over 200 points, and they're probably on course to do it again this
Hmm.
year. I mean, they're competing with the heavy hitters at 7 million. It's like, for me, you just have to own them. They're probably going to outscore the likes of Aubameyang and Son, and
Hmm.
they're a fraction of the price. So yeah, for me, they're no brainers.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that because you want to get you've got 100 million when you first start the game, and then gradually you can build it up. Get I say 104 million, but you
Yeah,
want to get the most value for that. Um, in terms of that value, this is a really interesting point. So what about those really the low value players that can offer you some points, not loads of points, but they can offer. So, for example, last season we had Wan-Bissaka, 4 million defender.
yeah,
This season we got John Lundstrom. Lost his place at the moment, but nevertheless showing value there. Do you also target that end of your team as well? The bargain basement ones, the bargains that can get you points.
oh yeah, of course, yeah. You have to I've been caught out in years gone by, sort of thinking these guys they can't keep it up, but they can. You have
Yeah.
to, especially the cheap options, you have to get them in really. Um, Going back to
Yeah.
the heavy hitters, it kind of a good example of how it works for me is the 17-18 season where I was having a pretty poor average season, and then it became clear that you could pretty much captain Salah every week because he was just an absolute beast. So I kind of sold Aguero, sold Hazard, stuck the armband on Salah every week, and spread the funds throughout the rest of my team, and it seemed to work really well.
So what were the sort of players that you got in that where you spread that funds?
Um, Historically, I do kind of like to go big at the back. I've had a lot of success over the years with the
Oh.
likes of um, Terry Ivanovic and Leighton Baines, these sorts of players. Funnily enough, the start of this season, people seem to catch on to that, but it didn't quite work out at
No.
the start of this season, did it? But yeah,
Yeah. No, I can understand that as well. In terms of, you mentioned about hits as well with risks. So I was looking back. I think you've only taken one hit this season so far. Tell me a bit about that. Really, why is it important for you not to take so many hits, and how do you ensure that you don't have to take hits? So you've already got the players you want in.
yeah. So like I said earlier, I play a pretty conservative game, so I see transfers as pressure. So I try to look at players over a 5-6 week um, period for their fixtures to give me that stability. I don't tend to bring in rotation risks really. Players like um, Mahrez recently, he's been looking really good, but he's not the sort of player I'd usually bring in because I see that's a potential headache in the next couple of weeks, and that's another transfer out which you could use elsewhere. Um, yeah, I tend to only mix sort of three, four, five hits a season, which is obviously very low compared to a lot of other players. I know you had Neil Sheath on recently, and he's a player that makes loads of
Yeah.
hits and tries to get all the big hitters in. So it does go to show that there's a lot of different ways you can do well with this game.
Yeah, definitely. Another one of the Meet the Managers we had on recently, Tom Freeman, was talking about that stability of your team, but he likes to take a risk just for one place. For
Yep.
him, it was the fourth midfielder. So is that how you play as well? If you are going to take a risk, and you're going to go for a player perhaps who hasn't got the greatest fixtures, or perhaps is in a team that's a relegation team, is there a particular do you go for a midfielder or a striker or a defender, or is it just or do you get any of them in?
Yeah, I sort of take it as it comes, really. I don't take too many risks, but now and again I might make what I would call a bit of a calculated risk. So, trying to think of an example. Um, so in game week 24, I think I brought in Son,
Right.
Heung-min Son. You might say, "Oh, that's not a risk," but at the time he was such low ownership.
Yeah.
I think he'd just come back from the ban and he was real low ownership. And I was looking at it thinking, this is a proven asset here with he's nailed on good fixtures. I didn't need to make a hit to bring him in. So that's the sort of time where I might see an opportunity to go for
Okay.
low ownership players.
When it comes to the sources of information used, we've got a whole bunch of that. Not just at Fantasy Football Scout, but across social media. There's TV shows about it, a
Yeah.
multitude of podcasts. Lots of information is coming at you. What information is for you is key when you're making decisions each week, and how do you stop the noise?
Um, it's a bit of a mixture, really. I think probably the biggest factor for me is fixtures. Other than the likes of Man City and Liverpool, who are probably fixture proof, I won't bring in anyone regardless of form or
Yeah.
stats or eye test. If they have bad fixtures, it's just
No.
not my way of playing. But um, in terms of sort of eye test versus stats, for me, it's definitely a mixture.
Yeah.
So I do watch a lot of games, watch match of the day most weeks, but at the same time, I am a bit of a stats man as well. Shots in the box, big chances created. It's very rare that I'd make a transfer without looking at all these things, even if the eye test is sort of looking good. I kind of use stats to back up what I'm seeing in the eye test. If I see a player I think looks sharp, I might then dive into the stats to see, okay, yeah, he's looking good.
Is a current example of a player. So it's exactly what you've been speaking about. You probably know who I'm going to mention. Is Calvert-Lewin at Everton. Eye
Yeah,
test, great.
yeah,
Stats, great. In fact, he's top of most metrics at the moment.
yeah, he is. Yeah.
He's looking good. Great partnership. But Everton's fixtures absolutely turn. So
Yeah.
that type of player, what do you do?
For me, it's an avoid, but
No.
yeah, I like I say, fixtures is king for me. Really, I won't bring a player in um, if the fixtures aren't there. That's just the way I like to play. But
You've been playing since 2009. Now, I mean, I go back that far as well. And
yeah,
I think there was maybe 1 million, 2 million people playing, 7 million now. Obviously, some of those, are dead teams now. Nevertheless, the game has changed. Lots more information, as we've just been talking about. So, how for you has the game changed, and how has it altered how you play the game as well? Because you've got a high finishes back then, and you've got high finishes now. So you're clearly doing something
yeah.
right.
Um, I'm not sure exactly how much I've changed the way I play personally. It's probably more of an approach of the way I see the competition. Like, um, for me, FPL started with a group of sort of 5 or 6 friends in a mini
Mm,
league, and it was so competitive. One of the guys, Craig, who
mm.
who goes by FPL editor on Twitter, you may
Oh
know
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Yeah, um, he's in this mini league, and it was
Mm.
so competitive. And sort of every transfer I made was based on ownership of the rivals around me.
Right.
Whereas now it's I've got much more of a view on sort of overall rank and the Hall of Fame and the Elite 64 League, and
Mm.
that's the biggest change for me really, the way the game's grown,
Yeah.
and also the sort of availability of stats and
Mm.
information online, and
Mm.
obviously on the scout site and the community on Twitter. It's just gone absolutely huge, and you kind of need to adapt and make the most of all the information that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Hall of Fame, so you're seventh in there. So, I mean, pretty much anyone in the top 10, they've got a similar career ranking, history as yourself, and that's hard to achieve. How important is it for you to be within that top 10, amongst all these other names? And yeah, I mean, you mentioned about your motivation and the mini leagues. Is that now a sort of mini league for you?
Yeah, I guess it kind of is really. It's a bit surreal to see my
Mm.
name amongst some of the sort of FPL royalty, but
Mm.
yeah, it's great to be up there, and hopefully long may it continue.
Okay. Let's look at this, and I always ask people like yourselves about. I'll try and find the season where you haven't done so well. I want to know
Yeah,
why. So 2015-16, now you've got all these amazing ranks, and then suddenly 359,000 or so final finish. So what went wrong in that season?
such a stain on my record, that one.
Well, it's not too. I mean, it
Yeah.
hasn't done it too bad, but yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the big strengths of mine is I'm pretty patient with my players, and it tends to work quite well. But there's definitely a fine line between patience and stubbornness, and I think that was what caught me out that year with the Leicester guys.
Ah,
Yeah, I
that's
think I mentioned earlier on. I said the worst thing you can think in FPL is they can't keep it up, and that's kind of what I was saying all season. But
right.
but they did, and it hurt me. And yeah, lesson to be learnt there, really.
So that was like the likes of Vardy and Mahrez.
Yeah,
They were cheap. They weren't as well known as the big heavy hitters then,
yeah,
but performing like them. Um,
that's it.
that's it. So have you learned from that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
Especially with the cheap players.
mm,
So the likes of this season, we had Lundstrom and Pukki got off to fast
yeah,
starts,
mm,
and I just got them in straight
yeah,
away because you just can't afford to let these cheap players hurt you. I mean, especially the way I play, where I only own 1 or 2 heavy
mm,
hitters. If if Aguero is killing me, I like to think that the balance in my side might reduce that red arrow.
mm,
Whereas if Lundstrom is killing me, these guys have still got Aguero to come on the
yeah,
Sunday, and it's like
yeah.
you can't compete with that. these cheap players who are doing well, you need to get them in, and if it doesn't work, you can move them on pretty easily.
I've always found that interesting. I mean, I think that managers like yourselves are better from having a bad season, which sounds horrible, but because you do need to learn from something like that, and as you said, that's that lesson in action this season. Can Pookie keep this going up? Well, eventually he did stop scoring, but
Yeah,
it was a long time really, and we've also
yeah,
had similar recently this season with Danny Ings. I think it was 9 he scored in a row, something like that. It's those types of players, and it's also spreading the funds as well. Now here's a situation that happened to me. It may have happened to you. I put lots of eggs in a small number of players one season. I went for, I can't remember, Sanchez, Hazard, and Kane or something.
yeah.
And all of them like fell flat for a number of weeks, and the red arrows were enormous because I hadn't looked after the rest of the team. Exactly. Is that the point that you were just making there, about the importance of looking at that value and the whole squad and making sure the whole squad is performing?
Yeah, that's certainly the way I like to play. I think we'll probably move on to my current team shortly,
Yeah.
and you might see a little bit there. I definitely like to spread the funds a bit more and have that balance in the team.
Okay, let's do that now then. Let's have a look. This is so
Okay.
these videos are designed. Obviously, hopefully, lots of people will see them at the moment. We're currently in game week 26, which is the longest game week in history during the 2019-20 season. But these are designed really for anyone can watch them anytime. Really, it's just a snapshot really. So we'll look at your game week 26 side. Yeah, basically we're in the middle of a winter break. There's a split set of fixtures. Man City was going ahead last weekend, but then it was postponed. Liverpool are about to take place in their match, and there's a whole bunch of others as well. But looking at your team, you're on, I think I'm right in saying you're on 0 points at the moment because
Yeah,
you have spread your funds around to a number of teams, particularly around those that have got great fixtures. And it so happens that this coming weekend when those teams played. So I'm going to read, just for the benefit of those listening to the podcast version, I'm going to read out the team and then we'll go through some of those and find out about your decisions about them. So we've got Pope in goal, Gazaniga on the bench, and then you've got Alexander-Arnold, Doherty and Robertson as your three backline. You've got 3-4-3. Son, Salah as Salah's captain, De Bruyne and Traore in midfield, and then you've got Ings, Abraham, Jimenez up top, and also joining Gazaniga on the bench is Holgate, Cantwell, and Williams. So yeah, tell us about that team. Tell us about some of the players.
yeah. Yeah, I knew I was coming on halfway through the split game week. It was so tempting to bring in like Sheffield United and Man City players just to
Yeah.
boost my rank a little bit. Yeah. So the transfers I made this week were Doherty and Jimenez. I think Jimenez that transfer speaks for itself. I mean, what a player. Doherty is perhaps not the weapon he was last season, but he's still up there in terms of stats, I think, amongst the defenders in terms of shots in the box and big chances. So also I'm hoping with Bolly coming back, they might shore up the defence a little bit and maybe keep the odd clean sheet. That them two transfers actually gave me a Wolves triple up. It's not too unusual for me to double or triple down on the top teams when they've got good fixtures. I've got Gazaniga still in there, unfortunately stinking the place out, but
Yeah.
normally I'd like to have kind of two rotating keepers there, but this late in the season I'll probably sort that out with the wild card. Still got Abraham in there. My patience is probably wearing a little bit thin there. Although when I watch him, I do kind of still like the look of him, and
I think I'll mark that down. Okay. That's that. Bear with me a second.
no worries.
Okay. Okay, yeah, back on again. So yeah.
Yeah, so Abraham. my patience is probably wearing a little bit thin with him, but I do still quite like the look of him when I watch him. I think his stats are pretty underwhelming, but um, he is still the top striker in a top four side, and I got him at 7 million, so I'm kind of happy to stick with him for a little bit. But I've actually had a bit of success over the years with. I think it's important to get players in early, but also I've had success with kind of holding on to players that extra 2 or 3 weeks when people are getting rid of them, because they almost become a bit of a differential. And I mean, he's not become a bad player overnight, so I'm happy to give players that bit of extra time.
Also, I noticed I was just looking at his fixtures as well. So he's a good example of what you were talking about there in terms of fixtures. So yeah, I mean he's got Manchester United and Tottenham next. So you look at that and go bad. But then fixture wise, you've got this wonderful run of Bournemouth, Everton, Villa, Man City's bad, and then you've got West Ham, Watford, Crystal Palace, Sheffield United, Norwich. In fact, right up until game week 36, apart from those top two, virtually, so it's a great run of fixtures. So
Yeah,
potentially he could be in your side still.
potentially, yeah, absolutely. Obviously the Tottenham and Manchester United games are the next two, but they're both home fixtures, and I kind of fancy his chances against them teams anyway. To be fair, so yeah, hopefully he'll come good. But like I say, he's definitely on the chopping block if things don't turn out too well, because he's not been too great lately.
I mean, you got your chips intact. So I look at this team and go, wow, you must have wildcarded really recently. But you didn't wildcard this at all. This is just your team. So that I guess
Yeah,
that shows the benefit of planning around fixtures. Really, you just happen to have a
yeah,
team that's. I mean, my wildcard team at the moment looks pretty much like that. So I've used a wildcard to get there. So you've got a wildcard coming up. You've got your other
yeah.
chips as well. What's your I'm guessing my next question about your transfers is going to be based around what your sort of chip strategy might be. So, where do you envisage using your chips this season?
Yeah, it's kind of given me a little bit of a headache this season trying to work out the best strategy. Where with all the postponed games and FA Cup, it seems to be the information's going to come a little bit later than usual. Um, I've kind of decided to try and get through 31 without using the free hit and wild card.
Okay.
Um, Hence, kind of why I brought in the two Wolves players this week. They've got great fixtures, and also they're definitely playing in 31, so I was happy to get them guys in early. Um, so yeah, I'll probably try and get through 31 with the free hit and wild card still intact, and then um, find out more information after the FA Cup ties, and definitely go for the more aggressive approach with free hit and bench boost in the double game weeks later to come.
Okay. So really, pile those chips into those final few. Now, at the
Yeah,
moment, you're 1,697th in the world. So, considering you're on 0 points for this game week, you're in a better position than many others because you've got your full complement of players. Well, barring any hurricanes, you've got
yeah.
your full quota of players to go. So is that your hope now? It's another top 1,000 finish, really. If those chips work out around the double game weeks.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like you said earlier, it's so difficult to get into that top 1,000. I think by playing well, you can try and get into the top 20,000, but you definitely need a bit of luck as well to get into that top 1,000, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, the chips and the double game weeks are going to be key. Looking at that game week 31, there might only be like three or four fixtures in that week, I think. So I know a lot of people were looking to free hit there, but it might actually be quite tough to pick a team that's going to be
Yeah.
get you the sort of points you're looking for with your chips, So
Yeah, a lot's going to depend on Liverpool. So if Liverpool actually got a game, then you're pretty well sorted. If you've got Wolves and Liverpool, you're
yeah,
halfway there, and you've got probably
yeah,
the two best teams that week.
yeah,
If Liverpool are out, then I guess there's a decision to be made. But as you said, I mean, do you really want to be stocking? I mean, you've got a bit of Everton, you've got a bit of Burnley, but do you really want to be stocking up on those types of teams?
yeah. That's it.
Um,
Yeah, it'd be great, like you say, if Liverpool get knocked out by Chelsea, and then we'll be most of us will be laughing, I think. But
Looking in terms of fixtures, so I mean, it's hard to ignore the double game weeks and the blanks to come. But looking straight in terms of fixtures, who else are you looking to remove? Who are you looking to get in?
um, so I'm probably going to roll a transfer this week. I still quite like the look of my team for next week, so I'm probably going to roll the transfer and then reassess next week with the two free transfers. Yeah, no real strategy as of yet for the next transfers.
One of the things I noticed, because fixtures figure so highly in the way you play, and value as well, but ownership, is that something you just don't even look at, or does it factor into your thinking at all?
No, I don't consider ownership, to be honest. I think over the course of the season, the biggest differential you can probably make is by making the sensible transfer and not worrying about ownership and bringing in just bring in the right player who's going to get you the most points for that week. So
Yeah.
it's not something that I look at.
Um,
Um,
I mean, it's been great to chat to you. Have you got? I mean, just before we go, have you got anything else you'd like to add at all? Because I think it's been good to look back at your career and also get that snapshot of this game week. But is there anything else you would like to mention, really, perhaps around your strategies or just general advice for our viewers and listeners?
yeah, I think I've touched on already. There's no sort of right or wrong way to play. I've given the way I like to play, but there's definitely no secret to success in
Mm-hmm.
fantasy. I think it's important to remember that it is just a game. We do forget that sometimes, and ultimately we've just got to try and enjoy it. And once that deadline passes, you've got no control over what happens with the players. So you have to do the best you can in the week, and then on the weekend just enjoy the games, and what happens happens.
Well, on that note, Darren, I hope you enjoy the rest of this game week because your entire team's ready to go, hopefully, and enjoy the rest of the season. And you get that other top 1,000. I mean, I say you get top 1,000 finish, but you can. I think you can get more. So I think. I mean, who knows? It could be that elusive top 100 finish. But for now, Dan, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you.